The Black Business Council says small companies may soon be excluded from major economic participation following amendments to government BEE requirements. Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana has announced that state-owned entities will no longer have to rely only on BEE-compliant companies during procurement.
What's likely to happen, the organs of state will just basically decide not to do anything about BEE. So 100% white-owned company that does not even have any level that is non-compliant will be allowed to participate in this process, and then that obviously is very disappointing, because it means Section 217 of the Constitution that is trying to bring people who are excluded by law to participate in the economy are not going to be able to participate.
Let's talk more about this with Cas Coovadia, CEO of Business Unity South Africa. Cas, a very good afternoon to you. Always good to have you on Daytime Update. Is Khanki Matabane right to be concerned about what this will spell for black-owned business?
Yeah, so I think that one needs to understand a bit more clearly why the minister made the announcement he did. I think that, and particularly in relation to organizations like Eskom, we have to balance the need for transformation and the need for economic empowerment, which are absolutely important, with the critical priority that Eskom needs to meet in procuring goods and services. And they need to, the priority for Eskom and for the country and for the economy at the moment is to get the energy situation sorted out, and to get that sorted out as quickly as possible and as urgently as possible. And if the requirements of adhering to BEE legislation as far as procurement is concerned is hampering Eskom's ability to deal with these critical issues urgently, then I think the balance has got to fall on the side of Eskom being able to procure wherever they can procure necessary goods and services from as quickly as possible, and at the levels of performance and that the plant and machinery is manufactured at the right levels.
Right.
So I think that then for particular circumstances, like the Eskom one at this point in time, I think for a period of time we need to make sure that the balance is toward enabling these institutions to procure as quickly as possible the appropriate types of goods and services they need, so that they can deal with the crisis that they're facing.
So even with that situation, right, the fact that it would be companies that don't meet the 2017 BEE requirements who perhaps would be better resourced, best able to provide some of the special needs at Eskom speaks precisely to the history of this country and inequality and how black people were iced out of those processes, does it not?
Yes, absolutely it does. And look, let's be absolutely clear, and BUSA has been absolutely clear on this. Black economic, appropriately implemented and structured broad-based black economic empowerment policies are absolutely critical for the country, because under apartheid, government made legislative interventions to ensure that the majority of the people in this country could not participate in economic activity. And so legislative interventions are necessary to ensure that the majority of the people in this country can participate in economic activity. And that's absolutely correct. But and let me repeat, that under certain circumstances, we need to balance the fact that an institution like Eskom going and applying the procurement, broad-based black economic empowerment procurement policies does not find the appropriate suppliers for the goods it needs, and it needs urgently, then I think Eskom should be allowed to, under those circumstances, procure those goods from wherever they may be available as urgently as possible.
How then do we make these changes work? Yes, allowing entities such as Eskom to be able to procure what they need with less red tape perhaps, or even being able to get it from a supplier who may not be BEE compliant, without a long-term situation where ultimately what we're seeing is the old guard benefiting in a democratic dispensation to the detriment of a black-owned business or businesses that have sufficient black representation.
Yeah, so let's put some safeguards into place. I don't know what the minister's intentions are, but one could possibly say that Eskom, and I don't know, I guess the Eskom board is having these discussions, that Eskom needs the next, 6 months to actually sort out a number of issues it needs to sort out, and that in those 6 months it would need to actually procure goods from wherever they can get it as urgently as possible. So put a time frame to it. Maybe that's one way of doing it. And if we do that, then in that time, let's also look at where the gaps are in promoting and building black business. So if the minister is actually doing this because Eskom is unable to find black suppliers to provide goods and services urgently, then let's try to deal with that in that time frame. Let's ensure that we build those businesses so that we don't find ourselves in a situation like this in future. But I think that we do need to recognize that at this point in time, the energy crisis is absolutely critical and would actually, if we don't deal with the energy crisis, it's significant amounts of black-owned small and medium enterprises that will actually be very, very badly affected. So let's look at the particular situation in this case. Let's allow for it in this case, and let's put some guardrails in place. And we have to be dynamic and flexible about these things depending on the situation we find ourselves in.
And you've mentioned the Eskom more than once in our conversation, but so far, I don't know if you saw it in the city press yesterday, they were saying 760 or so entities, including the likes of the Treasury Department, had applied for exemptions from the 2017 set of rules. Would it be fair to say that perhaps the new rules would make more sense for some entities more than others?
Sure. And I think if the exemptions are applied for, they need to be properly motivated. And they only need to be given under very, very strict circumstances. So I don't think we should allow this to be an excuse not to use black businesses because that would be racist. I think we need to look at each circumstance and each condition and each issue in its own, according to its own merits. And whoever is actually deliberating on those application for exemption must do so extremely carefully.
Cas Coovadia, thank you for your time, sir.